Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, and locked? Here we go. You dial set correctly to USA Prepares, broadcasting 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Mackenzie's engineering the broadcast today. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. And the telephone listen line's up, running 24 hours a day. And that's 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. There's a link to your instructors on the website, USAPREPARES.com. And our number one, Debra Brewster, is with us. Now, Debra Brewster is an entrepreneur. She's involved in and experienced in large projects, large construction projects. And she's got her master's in business administration. She's a real estate investor. And this hour is called Prepping Unwashed. Prepping Unwashed. So we're going to talk about some potholes that she's experienced, I've experienced. We've seen them. And we want to let you know what you might bump into along the way on your adventure in preparedness and survival. Welcome, Debra Brewster.
Good morning.
It's pretty early where you are, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is, but I've been up for more than an hour, so I'm ready to dive into this.
Yeah. So, Debra, you know, you and I were on the phone. In class, I'll let you know the backstory. I got a call, and it was, the term is butt dialing, right? Debra, isn't that what it's called?
Exactly.
Butt dialing. And, yeah, so Debra just happened to dial me by accident. You know, we've known each other for years. She's been to the farm, and we've been to meetups together. She's presented, and she's, I guess the best way to describe you, Debra, is you're a bundle of energy, and you idle at 120 miles an hour. Would that
Generally
right?
speaking, that is pretty accurate.
And so you decided to dive into the preparedness arena. You've been to the expos. You've talked to a lot of people. You've met a lot of the experts in the area. And we're going to share some of our thoughts, things that we've seen that might surprise the class. It just might surprise the class that what we're going to tell you today. So, Debra, one of the things that we were going to talk about was it is really difficult to get people on board. And we can't figure out why. Why is it that, you know, when we discuss preparedness, and which is simply, preparedness is very simple. It's having what you need before you need it. It's having those items in the refrigerator already before you open the refrigerator door. That's all it is. It's having what you need before you need it. It's having gasoline in the tank of your vehicle before you drive away. It's having oil in the engine so it doesn't self-destruct. It's preparing, it's maintaining, and it's what it is mini-max regret. It's living your life trying to minimize your maximum regret. So if you're on your way to work and you say, geez, my maximum regret is not being able to get to work because I'd run out of gas, well, then you put gas in your car before you leave or on the way, but before you run out. That's all it is. It's as simple as that. And what we found is it's difficult to get people on board with that. And there was a post on Zero Hedge yesterday, and the new FEMA director, FEMA, His name is Brock Long. And he's repeatedly said that Americans do not have a culture of preparedness. So it's,
and that's been,
Deborah, it's not
frankly,
you saying it?
what I think that I thought about last night, what I wanted to share. And I don't think I'm going to segue much. I'm not going to get into the minutia of, like, things to do with prepping. I think, for the most part, a lot of people understand that. But what I wanted to address is, what is the mindset of people here in America? And I began to think about the different personality or thought process that individuals possess that keep them from getting ready. Now, of course, you start with the number one type, which is your type, what I would call the self-reliant prepper. You have been, executing your plan and acquiring the necessities to be able to carry out life as best as we can under the most dire situations. And you've come to terms that, you know that you're going to at least have to do, you and your family are going to have to do it. You may, there may be other people that come alongside of you, probably not, and I'm going to speak to that, but let's face it, there's probably not even 1% of the people in this country that are like you. And believe me, I interface with, hundreds, if not thousands of people, throughout business and just, we travel a lot for our work. And I just, we come in contact with a lot of people. And so, believe me, I know that from life experience, probably 1%. And you might represent the 10% of the 1%, that really are very advanced in survival or their self-sufficient skills. But let's talk about those other personalities. And I think, and we need to have your listeners think, ask themselves, after I describe these personalities, am I one of these people? Because there are consequences to everything. What you think is going to affect what you do and how you act. So let's talk about those types of personalities. There's, number one, those that just think preppers are crazy. Maybe they've seen a survival show, Doomsday Preppers or whatever, and they're just, they just discount it. They don't even take the time to even just maybe really watch it and meditate, internalize, digest what it is that they're seeing, and is there any value in it? So we're going to call the people to say, they're just crazy. Then, of course, you have, unfortunately, it tends to be in the millennials, the X generation, those that are just clueless. They're so wrapped up in just their texting, their internet games, seize the moment, living carefree, whether it's they're chasing down their sports or whatever is the aphrodisiac of the day. And they're just, they just are wrapped up in themselves. They're just self-indulgent. And then, of course, you have those that say, okay, I know, but, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to die anyway. It's just too big. I just can't even go there. I'm too old. Hey, I lived a good life. I don't really care. And even that person's very self-centered. They don't think about maybe their children, their grandchildren. It's just, they're all about themselves. Sometimes even seniors get very selfish, because, they are really, frankly, the biggest beneficiary of Social Security and all the government, let's say, programs that are out there. And it's, they're the ones that usually don't want to vote for, let's say, a bond when it comes up that may be for schools. Because if they don't have kids, hey, I'm going to vote down everything. They're not going to, pass it on. So they're just self-centered as well. Then, of course, you have those that, just drinking the Kool-Aid. Maybe they worked in an industry, healthcare, IT, high-tech, and they have been, for the most part, not affected by what has happened in our economy. And, they maybe want one of the ones that faced the possibility of a foreclosure back in the 2008 meltdown. And they're slowly building their retirement account, and whatever money was lost, it has come back, at least on the surface. They feel, things are fine and, I'm okay. So they just don't give much thought to it because they're comfortable. And then, of course, there's those that I think are the most evil and depraved, in my mind, that say, hey, I'm going to come and take what is yours. You've made the sacrifices, the blood, sweat, and tears, and foregone let's say maybe some finer things in life, or the vacation to the Caribbean, or the cruise, or whatever the case may be, or maybe the $100 shoes, or the $300 purse. And frankly, we know people that, have $3,000 purses, the Hollywood people, but they just think it's good. They just can't even imagine that things are going to change. And then, of course, you have those that they think the government's going to just be there, that the government's just going to outreach and take care of all their problems. We went from, in the food stamp generation, 41 million, I think it was, in America that, were living on, getting food stamp entitlements. It's just that people were just on the grab, whether it was the free cell phones or whatever the case may be. They're just basically takers. They don't want to work for anything. They want it given to them because the government has set this safety net that takes away all the incentive, and whether it's you have to work, and that's why you do it, but they've taken the necessity to work, to have purpose, and to try to, be, let's say, a giver into society, to instead of being a leech upon the system. So we have those that they're just lazy. They'd rather just do their, what's that drug, the opioid epidemic. They just want to party. They just want to live carefree and reckless. And they don't want to invest in education and self-improvement. So there's all these different mental sets that really are just irresponsible. And then there's one or two more that I hear the commercial break coming on that I find that maybe I can give a little feedback for them.
Class Debra Brewster's with us, and we're talking about the mindset of preparedness. Debra, you've got a couple more types of individuals that you're discussing within the mindsets?
There's one, before I get to the last one, and this one, at one point, even I found myself falling victim to this. And that is what I call the disenfranchised or the discouraged prepper. When you're out there and you're really thinking about all the things that you do need, really being the student of what it takes to be able to be prepared. And I'm not talking being, the evacuation 72-hour plan. Like Red Cross or whoever might tell you, have at least 3 days of food. I'm talking where you're going beyond, where even thinking not just 30 days, but a year, or even taking it further out, what that would look like in your preparedness. But basically, that you get discouraged because, you see all these things unfolding, and then they, seemingly seem to all eventually work out. And so you think, you know what, I'm just wasting my money. I'm just wasting my time and energy doing this. Why am I even doing this? And then, thank God, we do get these events, and they're like the birthing pains when a mother goes into labor, and then, she gets a break, and then all of a sudden the pains start again. I mean, we had Katrina, but then, after that kind of went over, then we, of course, had, other events, but all of a sudden, look at the intensity, just like the birthing process, what's happening. We've had earthquake in New Mexico. We have, I forget what island it is. Right now they're evacuating the island because a volcano. The magna is rising at a alarming rate, and they believe it's going to go off. We had literally Florida. You know, we had Texas. We have Puerto Rico. And we just, you know, add to that the craziness, not only the ISIS and, you know, then we have the Rocket Man in North Korea. Just the world is blowing up around us. And thank God we have, you know, they may not hit in your own backyard today that we're having that, because I do understand you do get weary and well-doing sometimes. And so, you know, I want to encourage those people, and that is another mindset that could be dangerous if you let your guard down and you don't stand alert and ready to respond. And I came off of that cycle fairly recently. In fact, one of my kids said, actually my son-in-law said to me, "So, Deborah, I don't hear you talking about prepping much anymore. So the world didn't end, so you aren't doing it." And they, of course, implemented a lot of things when I was, like, pounding it into their head, you know, and of course, helping them prepare. But I realized that, yeah, you can become lackadaisical, I'm getting tongue-tied here, but too relaxed on the situation, and you let your guard down, and you just kind of lose sight of what of what you're doing, and keeping your eye, you know, on the mark, that you've got to be ready in season and out of season. And of course, as these things have begun to escalate, you know, it was my wake-up call. I had kicked back in and, you know, went back to the basics and reevaluating, you know, my prepper supplies, and because I did go through a period of building up my small hobby farm where I, you know, went from not knowing the first thing about animal husbandry, you know, getting cows and chickens and rabbits and excavating a pond and learning, you know, how to raise these animals. And, you know, finally I'm like, you know what, it's just cheaper for me to go buy eggs, okay? And it's taking care of the garden. My vegetables don't look as pretty as some of those in the store because they're all genetically modified. Mine look like the way they really come out of, you know, generally speaking, if they're not given all kinds of potential modifying genetic material and chemicals. And so, you know, I did kind of back away. But, you know, I, again, tried to say, okay, we need to, you know, I need to make sure that, you know, I can implement this stuff on the drop of the dime, start putting things back into play. Yes, even if I, you know, can go to the store and buy it cheaper and without the, you know, because time is money. So when you have to do this stuff yourself, it, you know, I look at it, what did it really cost me to grow that stuff? But at the same breath, you know, it's an awakening. So I went back to prepping my garden and, you know, just getting back on track and getting out my seeds and looking at what my inventories are and, you know, are things past expiration? Do I need to update some more, buying some more seeds and all these different things? So, again, is do not grow weary and well-doing. But the
hold that thought. Going on. Class, just a quick update. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central Time, I'm going to be a guest on the Bardon Report, Bardon Report, with P.J. Bardon on Republic Broadcasting. So if you're interested in tuning in, that's tomorrow night at 9 on republicbroadcasting.org. Debra Brewster is with us, and we're talking about the mindset of preppers. And Debra, you said don't grow weary. You're absolutely right. You know, sometimes you just have to say, you know what, I'm still doing the right thing, even though the world has not come to an end, even though we haven't yet had an EMP, even though radiation hasn't killed everyone around us, even though the signs are of the economy, at least what the mainstream media is saying, everything's wonderful. The economy is growing, unemployment is down, everything looks great. Even though it's hard to believe that, even though I don't believe that, I see people who have just lost their way in the preparedness mindset. And I believe it's happened since Donald Trump has become president. There was this feeling that the previous regime, what I call the dark days of this country, the Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, those days were pretty frightening. We've lost freedoms and so forth. people were worried. They were buying guns, and they were expecting civil unrest, and they expected to have to defend their property, and they were expecting that there might be shootouts and those kinds of things. Well, since Donald Trump has become CEO of corporate America, well, it seems that there is this feeling that everything's going to be fine. And now what we're doing is we're more worried about whether guys with short pants chasing balls on the field are kneeling or not. That seems to be the big deal. Well, I'm still concerned about preparedness. I'm still concerned about, one of the main things for me is I know for an absolute fact that without electricity, a lot of people are going to die very quickly. Let me just give you one very simple example. Let's say I wanted to drill a hole to fix something. I'm talking about drill a hole with a drill. Well, how am I going to do that without electricity of some kind? I can't turn the drill with my fingers. How many people actually have a hand-powered drill, one that you hold with one hand and turn the crank with another? How many have bits that will actually work in that drill? Very, very, very few, because we've gotten rid of them. As a matter of fact, we've even gotten rid of the corded drills, the kind you plug in favor of the cordless drills. Well, those cordless drills don't work without being recharged. It's as simple as that. And all we're talking about now is drilling a hole, a small hole. So I am, very concerned, and I still think that the grid is at risk. I think the food supply, the food chain, the supply chain is at risk. I think there's threats from 360 degrees. So yeah, we need to not give up. We need to continue. We need to keep on course. Maybe ramp up our course. That's what I've done. I've ramped up, literally. Right after this broadcast is over, 1 minute after it's over, I'm going to be working on our solar array, installing more panels. Why? Because I know that without electricity, people are going to die. No question. Deborah, please continue.
You're absolutely correct. And, and that leads me to the last person. And the last person is actually much more significant, or the personality type, or the mindset is better to describe it. And I'm going to talk about Christians and those, and I am a Christian, so I'm when they say about judging one another, I remember the finger can be pointing back at me. But see, in the prepper community and how this all ties together. You have the self-reliant prepper like yourself, who has been 12 years or so, I believe you said that you had been prepping, and you're so far, down the end of the goalpost, whatever, that you're probably going to, ride it out very well. But generally speaking, there is going to be some point that you better have community. And because you're not going to be able to work 24 hours a day. And if you remember a couple of years ago, I recall you got sick and your sons kind of stepped in and covered your farm and kept the chores going. You were just down for the count for a week or two. And so we know that we cannot, we're not an island to ourselves. We cannot do this alone. What I found, though, in the prepper community, generally everybody just goes it alone. And I don't think you're ever really going to see preppers come together in a community until it's the absolute end of the road. The line is towed and they have no other choice. But normally what you have happen when we have natural disasters and events, people are relying either on the church or they're relying on the government. Well, we know the government can only be so many places at one time. Just like, the resources, the human, our National Guard, our military, not only are they defending us abroad, they just can't be dispatched everywhere. There's only so many people in the National Guard that can go and meet our national emergencies, such as, Irma and Maria and Jose and just, and Harvey and all these events. So the church, how the church feels, from the beginning of time, it was the church that took care of one another. We didn't have the big government systems. Those platforms weren't in place. And even to this day, the church is the one that steps up with the volunteers and helps their neighbor. But it's the mindset of the body of Christ, I'll call it, of the Christian believers. And it's like those that believe in pre-tribulation, hey, God is going to take me out of here. You know, I don't need to prepare. They're super spiritual. Why would I prepare? You know, that's just lack of faith. You know, God's going to meet all of my needs. But what they fail to realize, you know, is when events happen and it's the Christians in the church that comes out and delivers the food, like there's some great ministries that go to all these torn areas and they're ready to go. That's because those Christians are what I would call the wise servant. They prepared. I mean, and so Christians will use it as an excuse. Oh, I'm going to be raptured out of here. I'm not going to have to go through that. Now, I don't subscribe to that. And I have to say to those people, because they're just like numb to, they think they're being spiritual, but they're really being not wise, good servants. And I say to them, well, do you lock your door at night? Do you put your kid in a car seat when you would go somewhere? Do you have a home alarm? Do you buy homeowners insurance? Do you have car insurance? When you go to the grocery store and you see you're running low on toilet paper, do you pick up toilet paper? Do you keep, some food in your refrigerator? Do you go to the doctor just for a checkup or to get your medications? Why is it that all these other things that people do to prepare, whatever it may, be, buying clothes for the kids for school or whatever the case may be. But when it comes to, emergency preparedness and having more than just maybe a week of groceries in the refrigerator, they want to spiritualize everything and make excuses why they're not prepared. Do they even have any emergency cash? Do people try to even keep $1,000 of small bills, just if they can't go to the ATMs and if they've got to go and, just pick up stuff? Have you ever been in a store? Like I was at Harbor Freight one time, and the credit card machines went down, and everybody in line, thank God, I always kept, and I always still do, emergency cash on me at all times because I was able to complete my transaction. So people they spiritualize things, and they just think that God's going to take me out of this. And, Americans are deceived. They are deceived by the pastors in the pulpit that don't tell them to prepare. If they lived in any other country, look at the atrocities that are happening all around the world. I mean, do people not remember when I believe it was ISIS, or whatever crazy group it was, lined up all those people in the orange jumpsuits and beheaded them on the beach? Or when they took that soldier and burned him in the cage? Or when down in, I think it was Boko Haram, or like 200 girls were kidnapped and sold as sex slaves, and the human trafficking and everything that's happening in France and in Germany and in Syria and just in Iraq. And wake up. People are they're just happy going to a little job, going to church on Sunday, and being told they're going to be raptured. Let me tell you, if you lived in any other country or in a good percentage of countries around the world, you would realize we are going to go through something. And we have been insulated by the grace of God. But, I believe that hand is being lifted. And what you see is now all these events happening because the second that a nation turns its back on God, then there is no covenant. There is no obligation of God to come in to try to help meet that need. And I believe that these birthing pains, because I believe God is giving us over to a reprobate mind. We are a fallen people. We lack moral clarity. We just we're lost. And so I grieve when I go to different churches because I travel a lot for our business, and I hear and I observe how many people, they just think, I'm going to be out of here. I don't need to worry about this. I just wish people would wake up, take some responsibility, be that good servant, that good steward. Think of your family. Think about of your loved ones. Think about being responsible. You know, don't be a leech on society. Take ownership of your life and be a watchman. Contribute. Make a mark. Make a difference. You know, just make your life have value. And so, you know, I just wanted to share that because that is that last person that grieves me, that just, you know, they're just deceived. They lack knowledge, and they're just the pulpit that doesn't want to preach the full gospel.
Class Debra Brewster's with us. Debra, I've got a couple quick comments, probably to put exclamation points on what you just said. When we had our preparedness expos years ago, first expo about 7 years ago, I guess, I called, Springfield, Missouri is in the Bible Belt. Some say it's the buckle of the Bible Belt. Some say there's a church on every corner. Well, there are churches in the Springfield area that have 3,500 members or more. Huge buildings for worship and huge memberships. Well, I called a lot of them, and I visited a lot of them. And what I said to the pastors was, you know, you've got 52 weeks in the year where you are helping your flock with spiritual preparedness. How about one of those weeks, just one out of 52 weeks, where you help them and bring them to the Get Prepared Expo and let them learn a little bit more about physical preparedness? Well, I can tell you that no one, absolutely no church was interested in helping the flock survive physical events. None. Not one. Not one. Catholic, Presbyterian, Protestant, Baptist, didn't matter. Not one preacher was interested. That's one thing. The next thing is, I happened to be in a bookstore in Springfield, Missouri, and the owner of the bookstore said to one of her customers, "Hey, here's the guy. This guy right here," and she was pointing to me. Finelli he's got this expo coming up right down the road in Springfield, Missouri, and that's where you can learn about preparedness and survival. And this woman was a senior citizen. She had a book under her arm, and her response was quick and terse. And she said, "Honey, I've got all the preparedness I have right here in this book." It was the Bible.
And, you know, and that's the problem, is that people say, you know, I've just got to have faith. Well, do they think that food is just going to show up at the door? I mean, like I said, you know, in the Bible you can look at, you know, Noah building the ark too. There's so many different Bible characters that prepared and they stayed the course. They didn't become that weary prepper that even I myself have gone through windows of, you know, questioning, why am I doing this? But the main part is that, you know, we have to be able to take care of ourselves. And even the body wants to get out there and try to help people if they have, you know, extra provision. But we also have to know, too, that drowning people pull others under the water. There's going to come to the point that there's going to be so much going on around us, you just can't be there to help them all. At some point, you're going to have to say, you know what, this is it. You know, what I've done here, I've got to take care of mine and my own. And, you know, it's not that that's people think that's an ungodly thing, but to not tell you the truth. You know, if you love someone, you tell them the truth to help them be protected. If you see a snake, you know, by your child, you're going to grab your child. You're going to, you know, you're going to warn people, you know, when, you know, the hard times are on its way. And that's the one thing that, you know, you do, Vince, is you're sounding the alarm daily. And people, they can just become tone deaf. And, you know, my just word of encouragement is begin to think responsible, get awake, because just look at the news, what's happening around the world. This stuff is incoming. It's in our own backyard. I mean, the enemy is within the United States, and it's just a matter of time that another event is going to happen, whether it be natural or if it be man-induced. And I think it's likely to be man-induced, and it could be coming as far as from Korea to here, North Korea to here. But nevertheless, our enemies, everybody hates America. I mean, almost every country around the world, hates us. And so, we just have to begin to, charity does to some degree begin at home. Yes, you want to contribute to your body, but the best thing I could ever give to you is to give you knowledge and to teach a man to fish rather than give him a fish.
Debra, very well said. You have said and taught more in this 1 hour than I would think many other broadcasters would be able to provide. And I thank you for being a broadcaster with us and helping spread the knowledge. Debra Brewster, again, thank you so much. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I was just chatting with our engineer about how I met Dr. Doug Leigh. And I mentioned that Dr. Leigh had called in, had never talked to him before, and he called in with Dr. Norman Shealy, being our senior instructor, and he had some questions for Dr. Shealy, and I was so fascinated with what Dr. Leigh had been asking and the level of discussion that I wanted to talk to him off the air and invite him to be an instructor. And so here we have Dr. Doug Leigh, veterinarian, with us for hour number 2. Thanks so much for joining the faculty, Dr. Leigh.
Well, you heard the dogs in the background, so you may hear that periodically. I've got someone working outside, and, of course, they get all upset when somebody new comes into the area. So if you hear barking, that's what it is. We're home, but that's why we do this.
Yeah. And Dr. Leigh, I did a 7 1-hour classes on USA Prepares about extreme tax deductions. And I said that, there are some posts on the internet that says you cannot deduct, your pets. And I said that's absolute nonsense, because in our case, we have some dogs, and they are active members of our farm. They are part of our security detail. They protect our other animals, and I will deduct them, and I do deduct them. And so I just heard a couple tax deductions barking in the background at your end.
I haven't tried that yet.
No, well, I'll tell you. Oh, all right. Let me just say it. Say it very
I'll put
quickly.
That one down. That's one to consider.
Okay. Well,
here's they are very, very good. Watchdogs. They wouldn't attack anything. First of all, they were probably licking to death, but they bark initially when there's a stranger in the area, and they say that a sign that there's a dog on the premises, beware a dog, is just as good as having your burglar alarm in your house. Well, and
that was exactly the strategy that I used when I taught the class, and that is that we live in the middle of nowhere, in rural Missouri, and no one's coming to help us. Okay, so we're on our own, and we have to protect and defend our livelihood, our family, our animals, and there are predators. There are wild animals that will try to eat our calves if they can, and so we have some chickens, and the chickens aren't really all that good at defending themselves, but the dogs are outside. We have outside dogs, inside dogs, and they all seem to understand that they have a job to do, and their job is the defense and protection of the farm, and because of that, I never saw anything in the tax code that said all burglar alarm systems, all security systems shall be of electronic nature with cameras and must dial, some authority or some call center. I haven't seen that. Well, because of that, I believe that we can have biological security systems, and I have deducted over the years. And what I'm saying is I'm giving an invitation to the IRS to come get me right now. I'm saying, here's what I'm doing. And they will lose.
They can't find you out there. Well, I'm in the Ozarks. We're about 50 miles apart.
Yeah.
So I live in rural areas also, just 3 miles outside of town, but it's still rural. Mm-hmm. And we have had some strange people around here, very strange. And
Yes.
we've had the sheriff come in here and ask questions about one of my neighbors and so forth. But the dog does a lot, and also a sign that there is a burglar alarm in the house, although I don't have one. There's a sign out there that says there is. That helps a lot, too, so far. That's what the experts say.
I think our sign, if we were to have a sign, would probably say, never mind the dog, beware of the owner.
I've got one of those, too. I thought about putting a camera out here, but they tell me, no, don't do that, because they know they'll come in here. If they're driving in, they'll know it's a fake camera. They can tell. But no, I'm not doing it. I've had good luck. I've lived here for 50-plus years and still have never had a problem with any burglars or anything. Had a few fraternity guys show up or on pledge trips where they pick them out in the country and drop them off. But had a couple of those show up at times, not lately, but several years back. But that's part of living in a college town, too.
Yes. I think I planted the seed of don't burglarize the Finelli farm when I went to the Farmers Cooperative. And I said, you guys sell hydrated lime? And they looked at me like, hydrated lime, that's more expensive than, agricultural lime. I said, yeah, I'm aware of that. So do you sell it? And they said, yeah. I said, well, can I get a couple 50-pound bags? They said, yeah. And you know what it's used for, Dr. Leigh?
No, I don't.
In World War II, my dad used a lot of lime. He was involved in the liberation of the Philippines. And there were a lot of dead bodies all around. And what they did was they spread hydrated lime on them to keep the smell down.
Right.
Every once in a while, farmers have cows that die. And sometimes you just, in the wintertime, you can't dig a grave for them. Even with a backhoe, the ground is frozen. So we spread some lime on them, and that keeps the smell down until we can bury them. Or if they're small calves, we'll put them in our outdoor wood furnace, and they will be cremated. But so what I did was, when I was buying this lime, the people behind the counter asked me, what do you need the lime for? Because they know I'm of Italian heritage. And I said, well, you put it on flesh, and that was the message that I left them. So now, and before that, they said, you drive an old Mercedes. Why do you drive an old Mercedes? And I go, well, it's got a big trunk. You can put two bodies in there. So just a couple seeds like that was all it really took for people to say, I'm not going there.
I have used lime because we get
and they have
around here periodically. And I have used lime to put on the bodies because by the time you get to them or find them, they're beyond any salvaging and burying or anything. So, lime does a very, very good job.
Right.
Very good job. But,
so class, you might want to have some lime. Well, I've got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Cats and dogs, spaying and neutering. If we could start with that. So what actually is spaying and neutering? What is the procedure that you, as a doctor of veterinarian medicine, would use? What's the procedure for rendering a cat? Well, let's start with a cat as one who cannot reproduce, either male or female.
Well, the female, of course, is really more of a major surgery. You have to anesthetize the animal, and you can do that with either injectable anesthesias or inhaling anesthesias. So you have to put the animal out. Of course, then they're prepped, which involves clipping and scrubbing the area, make an incision, and then you have what's called a spay hook. And really what it is it's just a big hook. You go in and you fish for the uterus, pick up one horn of the uterus, you tie off the ovary, then go to the other horn of the uterus and tie off that ovary, and of course then cut them and remove them, go back and tie the body of the uterus off, which is where the vagina is. and you tie that off. The uterus of a dog and a cat is a V-shaped structure, or Y-shaped, depending on what you want to call it. You have the lower part, the straight part is the vagina, and then you have two horns going off, the left and right horn. And, of course, on the end of those is where the ovary is. So that's what you remove. And, of course, then it's a matter of suturing the inner muscle and the outer skin layer. That's it. Now, to neuter is different. Neuter is, you have to put them out, yes. Dogs and cats, you can use injectable anesthesia or, once again, the inhalation. But it's such a short procedure compared to a female that really I think everybody must use the injectable. I would recommend it because it's pretty quick. And it's short-acting, too. But you could take and prep the area and then go in and make your incisions. You could make usually one incision. If you want to make two, you can make two. But you go ahead and take out both testicles. And the dog, you tie them off and then remove the testicles. The cat is different. The cat, you don't have to go ahead and make the incisions as drastic as you do with a dog. You go ahead and make an incision in the scrotum, remove the testicle, tie it off, and just let it go. There's no suturing after that or anything. Now, some people will go ahead and neuter by pulling the testicle out, just make an incision, grasp the testicle out of the scrotum, and pull. I don't like doing that. Because that cord that goes in there hooks over an artery, and there is a very, very remote possibility that you could tear that artery as you're pulling the testicle. But that's how it is done on both. Now, as I say, the dog and the cat are both done to prevent any conception or fertilization. But that's why we do it. And really, they should be neutered. Spayed and neutered. Definitely spayed, because there's things from spaying that are prevented. Number one is breast cancers. Unspayed dogs, and it's a shame to see this. A dog maybe 8 years old come in, and she has growths all down her breast. They have 10 nipples, 10 breasts on the dog. I'm talking about every dog. Some may have maybe one or two more, but sometimes less. But they should put 5 on each side. Those become cancerous, and if they become cancerous, well, you've got to take the cancerous growth out, which is really a major procedure, and then you've got to spay the dog at the same time. If you don't, why, what is not infected will go ahead and probably get infected. But that is one major reason, and the other spaying is, as dogs get older, they'll get what's called pyometra, or infections in the uterus. And that happens up around 7 or 8 years of age. And that is, I think, that is fatal if it's let go. So what has to be done is...
Hold that thought. We're going into a break. Hold that thought. Class, we're talking about spaying and neutering cats and dogs. And the actual procedure, I know many of you may have been involved in having these procedures done to your animals. But we thought it would be worth knowing actually what the procedure entails. Now, Dr. Leigh, do the animals feel pain after they come out?
Well, let me go back a moment here. We were talking about spaying a female. I mentioned pyometra, and this is where the uterus over the cervix opening and closing over several years, bacteria get in there and they get infected. When they get infected, the uterus becomes full of pus. That is a critical situation. That animal has to have surgery or it will die. So that is another reason to spay. So basically, the reproduction thing is the number one reason we do it, but also you have the uterus infection, and that is a big factor, and the breast tumors. Neutering a cat, now there's another situation here. We neuter the cat because, and the dog, so for same thing, so we don't get pups and kittens. And that helps prevent 50% of the problem because it takes a male and a female to get there. Okay, the cat has a situation that nature put, and gosh knows why, but anyway, it's a stricture in the urethra, about, maybe 3/4 of an inch to an inch up from the end of the penis. It's like a funnel. It tapers as it comes out from the bladder. The urine comes out, goes down, goes to this tapered area in the penis. And that can go ahead and, if a cat gets infected, it can go ahead and precipitate stones, and the stones can obstruct. And when that happens, the cat can't urinate. If he doesn't get relief, he's going to die. And to get relief, you have to take him to a veterinarian. They have to basically backflush the urinary tract. And and sometimes you have to even tap the bladder to drain the urine out because you have so much pressure. That bladder in there is the size of an apple. The poor cat, he sits on the litter pan, he strains, he groans, he moans, he cries, but no urine. If you don't think anything's wrong with him, you better get him to the veterinarian and see if something is wrong with him. There's another thing you get, too, in neutering. In dogs and cats, particularly in dogs, you'll get a retained testicle, and it stays up in the abdomen because when that testicle is developing during the embryonic stage, it's formed up near the kidney, by the kidney, and then there is basically a ligament type thing that goes from that testicle down to the bottom of the scrotum, and as the embryo develops, why the scrotum draws this cord down and pulls the testicle down. If that doesn't happen, the testicle will stay up in the abdomen. The dog or the cat, particularly the dog, as I say, I've not seen many retained testicles in cats, but the dog will have one testicle only. The other one's up there. If you don't get it out, it'll turn cancerous. And that's just a fact of life. Now, why does it turn cancerous? Well, because of the body temperature. The body temperature will, if a testicle is up there, it is designed, the testicle is to have cool air circulating around it. And that's why it's drawn down into the scrotum. If it doesn't get down into that scrotum, cancer develops. Now, this happens in people, too. Want to get into the people stuff, Vince?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have a friend whose son died of testicular cancer at 18 years of age. And I told a doctor friend of mine in town here who happened to be a urologist, and I told him about this, and, he said, I can solve 90% of the problems that men have and boys in that area by just changing the type of underwear they wear. He said invariably they're wearing briefs, or we know them as jockeys, but they're briefs. It's just jockey's a brand name. As compared to boxers. If they wear boxers, it enables the testicle to stay cool, and you not necessarily never, but the incidence of testicular cancer and testicular problems is reduced drastically. He said 90%. Now, if you look at a bull standing out in the pasture, the first thing you notice, the testicles, and they're not up next to his body, they're down where they can get air circulating around to stay cool as they can be in the environment. Mm-hmm. And when it's cold, they draw them up a little bit. When it's warm weather, they drop them down, and they have no control over this. But nature does this to go ahead and prevent testicular cancers and testicular problems. It also helps as far as the sperm production. Sperm produce much cooler, in a cooler environment as compared to a warm environment. So
let's talk more about
for the testicles getting air and not being in a warm environment. So,
class, Dr. Doug Leigh is with us. He's got 40 years' experience as a doctor of veterinary medicine, and we're talking about boxers versus briefs. And Dr. Leigh, you were saying that the U.S. Army had a direct impact on your decision of boxers versus briefs?
They did. And the haircut, too. I didn't have much choice.
Yeah, so it was boxers in the U.S. Army?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nothing fancy.
And what did they say? I mean, when you arrive at day number 1 and you've got briefs on, and they say, well, what do they say? No, we're not doing that anymore?
Well, they get this film at you and said, here you are, wear these. Everybody did, because you had I don't know whether they took the other stuff away from us or not. I don't know what they did. That's a long time back. You're talking about 70 years or so, or more. But I don't remember. I remember I had my waist was 30 and my length was 30. I remember that. Now the waist is no longer 30. But they just threw things at you. They went down the line and here. There you go.
Yeah. Well, so here's the question. Here's the question then. I understand that if men live long enough, our chances of getting prostate cancer are really high. Now, is there a link between the type of underwear that men wear, boxers versus briefs, and prostate cancer?
I don't have. Have you heard that?
No, but I looked it up on the internet during the...
Because the prostate is tucked away in our body. It's up there. It's warm, and nothing's going to change it. It's going to be 98.7 or whatever, 6 plus, whatever. But it's up there, and it's protected. I don't think underwear would make a bit of difference in that.
Okay. Okay, I looked it up, and I couldn't find anything during the commercial break. But I was wondering if there was a link just because of proximity.
I don't think so.
To the testicles
I don't believe so. I think the
I didn't find
anything. The only thing would be affected in that situation. And of course, these rashes that you get.
Okay, so your advice.
My advice.
Go ahead.
Boxers.
Yes. Your advice for
type,
boxers.
Just boxers. Okay. And you can get some of this underwear that's pretty tight. Basically, it's almost like briefs, except it has little legs. But no, I think you should have some fairly loose boxers. That's about it. Just a plain old basic boxer shorts, and you should be okay. You're going to avoid the rash that is pretty common in that area too, because you don't have anything cutting into your groin as you do with the briefs. It's a heck of a conversation for about dogs.
Okay, so
we got off the wild tangent here. But yeah, I think it is something.
Well, I'm sure
ties in with, because you got the same situation affecting animals, and that is body temperature and testicular temperature. So there is a relationship. But
so those who are thinking about
is make sure you spay, make sure you neuter, and watch out for that cat. That's really the three things. And the cat, back to the cat again, you can, he's prone to getting urinary infections because when he squats down to urinate, that little penis sticks out. And if he's squatting down in litter, it's going to poke into that litter. And, of course, there's bacteria in litter, sand, whatever there may be. If he's outside, there's dirt. But with getting the infection, if he has urinary acid urine, he's less likely to have bacteria grow. So urinary acidifiers, and that there are acidifying foods available that will do that job and make the urine more acid and thus prevent infection and thus prevent the snow from forming, the gravel. This stuff is like sand that forms in there.
Okay, so
it's a serious
all right,
situation.
we have a male cat who has had that procedure done, and he has problems urinating. If you feel his underside to the rear, it gets very hard, and so we have these chemical pills that he takes, and I believe that what it is doing is acidifying his urine, right?
Right, exactly. If it gets plugged,
and is there a long-term fix? Yeah,
surgery.
Yes, poor guy, and all the things surgery. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
There is a surgical procedure.
What is that
basically
surgery?
What you do is very simply you split the penis in half and fold back and suture it open and get beyond that taper that's in there that I mentioned. That's about an inch back, and it works. But a lot of veterinarians
and will he be okay after that?
Or don't perform it, don't now or whatever. I don't know, but it can be done. I've done it, and it works. But
and now, in an emergency,
is the best thing.
In an emergency, yes. Now, in an emergency, what do you do? Do you put a catheter in there to relieve the cat until?
Yeah, you have to put a
let's say it's a
catheter
weekend.
in there. As I say, sometimes you have such pressure built up, you have to tap the bladder to remove some urine and get some pressure relief but you put a catheter in. You can take a needle, blunt needle, and put in there and flush with water. And also, on the dental machine we had, I'm sure the ones around still have them, there is an attachment that goes on there that goes up. It's probably about 3 inches long, and it goes up and it shoots water and vibrates. Because the dental machine, when it cleans, it vibrates that tartar off of there. The human machine and the veterinary machine both work the same way, same machine. But that goes ahead and squirts water up there to keep the tip of the vibrator when cleaning the teeth cool. But you have this attachment like a needle. That's all it is. It's basically a blunt needle, and it fits on the end of that machine. It goes up and vibrates the stuff loose and blows it back. It works real good, real good. But you got to get them relief.
Great.
See, if you don't, then the pressure builds up, and it goes back and literally blows the kidney apart. Because urine keeps producing, and there's no place for it to go. And once the bladder's full, it starts backing up, and it blows the kidney apart. And then you got an animal that's uremic. His kidneys cannot filter anything out of the system, and he'll die from uremia. So that's a factor, a real serious one. But anyway. Got to watch out for that one.
When we pick up our male cats who have been neutered, we need to feel around to see if they are firm and hard right in the rear area, just in front of their back legs. Is that right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. You'll feel a big old knot in there about that, and then when you touch it, if he's got a problem, and when you put pressure on that, he's going to really let out with a howl. And you'll know that he's got something wrong. But I wouldn't necessarily go around and feel all the time. He's going to get the cat all spooky and everything. Mm-hmm. But if he's got a problem, I would say if he's sitting there and no litter, no urine, and crying and in a litter pan all the time, I would feel and see if you feel a knot. It doesn't take any technical abilities to go ahead and do that, because you can feel a knot in there. If it's there, then he'll let you know with the howl. Yeah. I don't think people have that problem.
One of the most
well, you get
unpleasant
people
things.
Get kidney stones, and that's just about as close as we get to it, I guess. Yeah, about the same thing. Mm-hmm. But we got to get relief if we get kidney stones. One of the most
yes.
I would
as a farmer,
certainly change the food if you've got a cat who is prone to any kind of urinary problems. And you're doing that food or...
All right, and what do we change the food? What do we change the food to?
Oh, I don't know what's out there.
What do we change it to?
I haven't really been in practice for 15 years. But there's foods out there that will say urinary acidifying, and they'll be marked on the label.
Okay.
And all the major food...
well, that sounds kind of easy.
Food manufacturers make these things. That's what I would feed.
That sounds like a real easy fix.
So you might as well feed something that's going to prevent a problem if your animal's prone to it.
Right. And is that the fix? I mean, typically, if you have this problem with your male cats, just changing the food, you think that might do it for many cases?
It would work, yes.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah, and then the other option is surgery. But I would try and avoid the surgery. But there's foods out there.
As a farmer.
Or get on the internet, I imagine probably Google
as a farmer.
What?
As a farmer, one of the most unpleasant things that I experience is changing male bull calves into steers.
Yeah.
And the way I do it is and I'd like to have your opinion on this. There are many farmers who will just take a pocket knife and they will cut the testicles. I mean, they'll just lock the calf's head in an apparatus, and so the calf can't go forward or backward, and just they cut the testicles off. No anesthetics, nothing. Just cut it off and then pull out whatever's attached. And then there's some blood, and it's kind of messy, and it's rough on the calves. I don't do that, and I don't want to do that. But what I do, and it's still unpleasant, is I have what's called a bander. And there are these rubber bands that are probably the size of a dime, but they're really thick rubber, and they expand maybe 3 inches or so in diameter. And I will put them as high as I can up toward the underbelly of the calf. The testicles, both of them, I'll count 1, 2, get them both, and the testicles will hang below that. And just by the tightness of these rubber bands, the testicles will dry up and fall off. And that way we don't have to worry about that.
That's what you're doing.
Right. Now the question is that more harmful, or is that more humane, or is the cutting the testicles off? I mean, what is the best way to do it if you love your animals? And please tell us when we come back from this short commercial break. Dr. Doug Leigh's with us, DVM. We'll be right back. Class, just a quick update. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central Time, I will be the guest on the Bardon Report, B-A-R-D-O-N Report, with P.J. Bardon on republicbroadcasting.org. That's 9 p.m. tomorrow on Republic Broadcasting. I'll be the guest. So I'll be under fire. And if you'd like to give us a call, republicbroadcasting.org. Dr. Doug Leigh's with us, and I've been talking about something that's unpleasant here at the farm, which is castration of bull calves. And we use a bander with a heavy rubber band around the upper portion of the scrotum. The testicles are below that, and the scrotum falls off, in about a week or two. So we talked about cutting off the blood supply. Now, Dr. Leigh, is that more painful, less painful, more humane, less humane than just using a knife?
What's your success rate on that? You have 100%?
I think darn close to 100%. Yeah.
Darn close. Well, see, that's one of the factors you got to figure in some of these situations.
Well,
surgery is
I counted.
Procedure that I agree with you is pretty messy, and it certainly can't be very comfortable for the animal. Quite frankly, when I went to veterinary school, we went and did 6 of us would go out to this feed lot, and he would have cattle come in that he bought down in Arkansas. And those things were wild. They had never seen them, an individual, probably a man or anything. Yeah. And here they are being shuttled around and a truck here, thrown into a chute. And, boy, they were wild. But anyway, we branded, dehorned, castrated, all this, because you got to get this done, because you're going out into a field for the next year or year and a half. So they had to make sure that they were castrated. They didn't want something where they put rubber bands on and they would come off, and then you got a bull running around. You don't want a bull out there.
Right.
So anyway, that was why we did this, and it would give an economic factor and also a positive procedure that gave definite 100% results. I like your idea of banding. I think it's more humane. I have put, not rubber bands, but I have had animals, pets, because that's what all I did was pets, where there would be a growth on the body someplace, and it was just hanging there. Or rather than going ahead and doing surgery, I've tied many of them off, and, and like you say, in a week or so, they dry up and fall off, and that's it. It didn't seem to bother the animal too much, the dog, as it was drying up. I don't know whether you had the calves going ahead and they were jumping around, looking behind themselves and see what's going on. Did you have anything like that when you were tying them off?
Yeah. They don't like it. No. When you put the band on, they know it's on there. I think it's uncomfortable. However, I am of the opinion that it's less painful than having being cut without anesthetics.
Right.
And it's dangerous.
I think that they do cut as compared to rubber bands, because it depends upon your animals are all with you all the time. I mean, you do this and you've got them there for how many? A couple of years maybe? So you know what's going on. You know if the rubber band comes off or not, because you can see some development. What do you do if the rubber band comes off? Do you then go ahead and do the other procedure?
Well, no, we put them back in the corral pen. And then we repeat the procedure. And so we watch them. But I have to tell you that we are darn careful to make sure that the rubber bands don't show signs of aging and cracks. We prevent air from getting to them so that they don't fail.
Right.
And so we're very, very careful about the procedure. And I believe that I'm saying darn close to 100%. I believe we really are darn close to 100%. We've been doing it since 1989.
Well, it's quite a while.
But I don't like doing it. I mean, I really don't like doing it because I think
if you want to steer, you got to do
pleasant. Right. That's right.
Yeah,
we'll have three-eyed cows.
You could load them up with hormones probably and make them into a cow, but you don't want that because you don't want a hormone-infested body that you're going to go ahead and eat. But, if you want to steer, you're going to have to go one of the two ways. Yeah, and I would say yours is more humane than the cutting. But you got to look at the situation of the animal going out into a pasture or to the feedlot. But usually they're done when they're much younger than if we get to a feedlot at an older age. Yeah. But
we try to do it right away.
This was quite an experience for me. Being from New Jersey, I had never done any of this, and they put me on a horse to go ahead and round them up, and we were working them down into a tunnel. This is out in Abilene,
we're out of
Kansas.
time.